Hello and welcome to the third episode of the revamped Freaked Out podcast, a true crime podcast about the less known cases from all around the world. I'm Fabian Adams, your host. Hi. So, today we have a pretty lengthy story, so I still don't know if this is gonna be a two-parter, but if you see in the title, part 1, that means it's a two-parter. But if you don't see it, this is one of my favorite cases, because it's the case from Serbia, and at the time when I was doing the original Freaked Out podcast, I was the only person. My podcast was the only podcast that covered this story. I don't know, I haven't looked up. I don't know if I'm still the only person who will do this case, but I was the only one. And yes, you guessed it correctly if you listened to my previous podcast. It's Jelena Marjanović's case. And the script has 6 pages. Oh my god. How's your day? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. So let's ruin it. And more important, when I done this case in the past, this case was still open and now it's closed. So we have an update. I mean, everyone believes it's closed. I don't believe it's closed. Well, you'll see. So let's just jump straight into the story. It's April 2nd, 2016, and the April 2nd is the day when the news about the missing singer of the grand production, Jelena Marjanović, appeared on all portals in Serbia. In a country with a low murder rate, where the vast majority of murders are solved within hours of happening, since they're almost, impulsive, unplanned, obvious. For example, man killed wife in fit of jealousy, or man killed a man in a bar fight, friend killed friend in an argument over a girl, etc. Casual stories. Case like this naturally attracted attention. This was like a bomb was thrown at media. None of us expected that the events that followed would cause so much media chaos that has been going on for 7 years. So all the informations I have are from 2 documentaries. One is Tragovi istine, which is like Traces of Truth, and Dossier, which is basically files, like X-Files, and the tabloids Kurir, Blitz, Nova RS, and Telegraf RS. All the investigations and trial were still going when I was recording the episode. Even now, when the case is closed, there is no official information being released to the public, and all the facts presented in the following minutes are public information available to the public on the internet and not my personal opinion or claims. If someone tries to get me for this, people, you can Google the terms and a lot of shit pops up. So who was Jelena Marjanović? She was not very known singer, not to step on her foot, but she was kind of we have this grand production, that's the publishing house for music, and they produce hundreds and thousands of singers. They had this talent show called Zvezde Grand, the Grand Stars, and they produced hundreds and thousands, as I said, singers. So she was one of them, and she was not extremely popular, but people knew who she were, basically. She had 1 album and a couple of singles, and that's that. So she was born in Bekova, which is a village in Serbia on Mountain Golia, in 1983. She started singing when she was 8 years old. When she was 11, she was already in a band, and when she was 14, she won first place on a show, Prvi glas Vojvodine, which is translated as the best voice of Vojvodina. And Vojvodina is part of Serbia, similar as Kosovo was once, but I will not go there. She released her first album in 1998 and the second album in 2002. After her father passed away, she paused her career. Then she met musical producer and composer Zoran Marjanović, who she married soon, and she gave birth to her daughter Jana in 2011. In 2012, she returned to the stage and signed a contract with Grand Production, the biggest production record company in Serbia. Her marriage and her life were almost perfect, It always starts like that. all her friends, after her death, were describing her as friendly, open-hearted, full of love and charismatic, which is the way people always describe victims. And I fail to understand, is that like the form of compassion towards the victims, or always the good people are being murdered? Are good people stupid? Like, if you listen to other true crime podcasts, when they're describing the victim, she was like always so pretty, she was nice, she was kind, her smile lit up the room, she was a social butterfly, and etc. And what's up with that? I'm not saying the victims are stupid, but why do they always describe them like that? And now we have a timeline of things that happened. As I told you already, she was murdered. So Jelena was trying to lose weight since she was a singer, and we know how singers are treated today. If you're not slim and fit, you're no one, basic, and especially in Serbia. So she was jogging daily. And one day, on April 2nd, she left her house for a run with her husband Zoran and her daughter Jana. The plan was that they wait for her to run a few circles and then to go to her mother's house and later meet up with a few friends. Are you keeping up with me? Regarding to her husband Zoran, they firstly wanted to stop at a lake because there were swans, so their daughter doesn't get bored while Jelena's running. There was also a really nice path for running, like something professional. I don't know. I don't run, obviously. I'm fat. Bruh. So they went there to that lake. It's a lake around Belgrade. So they went firstly to that lake. But they gave up because there was a lot of people and Jelena wanted to be alone in her mind space to concentrate because she had to record a song tomorrow. So she wanted to, be in her zone, to chill and to meditate while she was running. So they gave up on that lake and they went to a field in Borča, which is the part of Belgrade, to run. There is like industrial zone with a lot of free space, like abandoned free space between two industrial zones, like a lot of space. And the deal was that she runs to the end of that field and then turned back while they wait, and so it was. Except she didn't return. And as Zoran said, he got worried. So they started slowly walking towards her so he can at least see her, that she is okay, that she didn't fall, tripped or something. And when she wasn't anywhere on the side, he panicked and he called her mom because, if you remember, they were supposed to go to her house afterwards. And maybe she called her or maybe she went straight back there. But again, she would need a car because that's abandoned industrial zone out of the city, and her mother was, first of all, I think that's across the river, I'm not sure, because Borča is across Danube. I don't know actually if that's I don't know where her mother lived, but I think it's across the bridge, and that is a large bridge. It's again me from the future. Yes, the Borča is across the Danube river from Belgrade, but her mother also lived in Borča, so they were fine. They were on the same land. Thank you. So Zoran called her mom to check if she got to her, and her mother said that she spoke to her half an hour ago to confirm that she will come, but not after that. And in the meantime, Jelena's mother got a mysterious phone call from Jelena's phone with a few seconds of silence before the call ended. Oh, that gave me chills, like goosebumps all over me. So she got that call with a few moments of silence. Then, when Zoran called Jelena's mom, her mom called Jelena's friend, who called her friend lawyer, and told her friend journalist that it's best to publish the news online because the police won't start search before 24-hour passes, so it would be the best to alarm the whole town so they can find her, because they knew that she would not run away, and this wasn't normal behavior. She was supposed to run to the end of that field and then run back. There was nowhere to find her. But what this friend didn't know is that from early 2015, the police was starting the search immediately after Tijana Jurić, 12-year-old girl, was kidnapped and murdered, And that time, the police didn't react right away. So they pushed the TNA's law later, and it was kind of accepted. I think that almost in 2019, it was fully accepted that the police did not have to wait 24 hours to search, that they can start searching immediately. But again, Jelena was an adult. And nobody knew, maybe she's lost somewhere, maybe she ran away from home, maybe she got kidnapped. The police was notified, and that's the most important. Many people gathered in that field to help in the search. And in one hand, it is good because if she was alive, lost or injured, it would be easier to find her. But in this case, a large number of people actually walked all over the place, and they destroyed all the evidences that have maybe been in that field, such as shoe prints, bloody traces. They destroyed everything. They stomped all over the field. You can search the pictures of that field. It's like a large field. One part is higher than the another, and then you have the trees, and then you have water canals on both sides of that field. So they thought maybe she was somewhere in between those trees, or somewhere that those canals, Well, the search lasted all night. And unfortunately, nothing was found. Even the dogs were brought, the cadaver dogs. Jelena's acquaintances testified that they called her all night on the phone, which was on all the time. It was ringing, but no one answered. On Sunday, April 3rd, in the early morning hours, the police first found her phone, then one sneaker, then a bloody jacket, and finally, sadly, Jelena's body in the water. She was face down in the irrigation creek or canal, as you wish, and she had signs of struggle, and it was obvious that she had died as a result of blows to the head with a hard object. They don't know if it was a pipe, hammer, or a rounded stone. So that's sadly how this story ends. So the autopsy concluded several versions of the story and what may have happened. So the first version is she was bludgeoned to death with hits in the head with a pipe-like metal object 9 times. And that's that. 9 times is the official number of blows to her head. You can read online in several tabloids. You can read that she was hit 20 times, then you can read that she was hit 33 times, like Jesus, Anyway, she was hit 9 times. And it was estimated that the hits were very violent and impulsive, and that she was probably incapacitated already after the first one. So the first version is that after she had been incapacitated, she was dragged away from the path into the nearby creek where the murderous blows were delivered. They found water and small particles in her throat and lungs, which indicates that she was still alive when she fell into the water. The second version states that she received the first blow on the running track, then she ran away and jumped into the canal to save herself, and then she received more blows. And the third version states that she was killed elsewhere, then dragged and thrown into the canal, and things were scattered just before she was found, because, as you remember, a lot of people were walking there all night, and the searches were carried all night, and her phone kept ringing, and it's basically impossible that someone did not hear the phone. But again, there was a lot of people, and it was loud. And again, I say it's a large space. But again, the path which she ran and where the search was later performed, and the canal where she was found, those two places are only 100 meters away. So the question arises as how no one heard or saw the attack and the fight between her and the killer, and how nobody heard the phone ringing all night. And the fourth version states that Jelena knew her killer and that she derailed from the path where she was running because someone familiar called her, and that was standing next to the canal, and that she went down the path to greet him, and then she was attacked. The police also determined that her wedding ring was violently removed. Unknown DNA not belonging to anyone in Marjanović's family was found on the ring finger. Her fingers were bleached, but this is not the official information, because I heard it several times and then everyone stopped talking about it. So maybe it's not real. So her fingers allegedly were bleached to destroy evidence. Debatable. There were few footprints found away from the body. They contained Jelena's blood, and cadaver dogs followed the traces for quite some time, and it seemed that the murderer simply walked away and walked off into the village field and went on foot for quite a long time. The trace lasted for 300 meters and then it was lost. So he might got into the car, or... There were no witnesses besides for the husband and daughter, although few people did jog that day and walked along the same path around the time of the murder. They were all questioned, but they didn't see anything or anyone. So that just fires up the theory that she was murdered elsewhere and then just dragged and dumped there. The particular murder site where she was found was not visible from the parking lot where the family waited for her, because, as I said, one part of that field is higher than the another, so they were on the higher, I believe. So you had to walk a little bit to see that path. And the road was generally irregular with a lot of blind spots and curves. But generally, it's mostly an open field. Investigators believe that this was done by someone who knew her, because everything points to a crime of a passion because of the way her injuries were inflicted, a large amount of blows to the head and face. And if you followed other true crime podcasts, you know that this style of murder is, I don't want to say popular, but it's common when the killer is really angry at the person. The killer knows the victim and they are really angry at the victim and they just smack her. This is unusual for someone that does not know who the person is and attacking randomly. That's really unusual. So Zoran, her husband, he passed the polygraph test, but later it was discovered that when he was doing the polygraph, he was on sedative drugs. So the test was repeated and he passed the polygraph test the second time. And the first time when he was on sedatives, his father gave him that sedatives. In all the interviews, he seemed apathic towards the whole situation, at least it seems to me. You know, everyone behaves and mourns in their own way, and that should not be condemned. But it seemed like he was talking about the events that happened, 10 or 20 years ago, not like your wife was murdered like a few days ago. To me personally, it was kind of unusual. So then, the circus starts. The media ripped apart all the participants in this story. This was a real boom in the tabloids, and it's a bit disgusting, the way in which everyone who could exploited this murder. It's as if it's not about the monstrous death of a real person who lived among us, but reporting on a reality show, basically. So I mentioned the Traces of Truth and Dossier. Those were two documentaries I watched. And in Traces of Truth, the subtitle was Hard Sufferings of Jelena Marjanović. And in my opinion, it was really a disgusting way of presenting their way they look on the story. And then Dossier, The Criminal Files, is an excellent documentary in two parts from 2016 and 2007. Not a day went by that Jelena's face was not on the front pages with a sick headline. The front pages were horribly rude. For example, Zoran's mistress shocked the police. I want to go to prison instead of Zoran. Then the next one was, who killed Jelena? Zoran will rot in a cell with the worst criminals. Plus, exclusive photos. Zoran's brother got married this weekend. Then the next one. Zoran hired a doppelganger of Jelena to cover up the crime. Jelena killed a day before. Indy is a killer. Indy is another singer that was working with Zoran at the time. Then the next one. Jelena was killed in the bathroom. Jelena was killed in the studio. Two singers involved in Jelena's murder. And it went on and on and on. And the media noticed that Jelena's mother, quote-unquote, mourned separately from Marjanović's family. They pulled out a story that she had an argument with his family. They spied on a house of both of them, followed them in step, followed them when they did their laundry, when they went shopping, Allegedly, they were washing clothes in the middle of the day, and this is done after midnight due to cheaper electricity bills. And this was also stated by some professor in the documentary. I couldn't believe my ears. Every day, another family member or friend was targeted. They claimed that Jelena's father-in-law was a psychopath, that her mother-in-law was a witch because she practiced Quakery. She treated that's basically that she treated people with the help of God and faith. I don't know if that's legal or illegal, but some people believe those things. They call her a witch. They peeked through the window of the house into her room, and the walls were covered with religious icons and pictures of Jesus Christ. And they took a photo through the window, and that photo blew up all over the internet. Every day, someone else was the killer. First a random old man with a hammer, then a jealous neighbor with a metal pipe, then her friend, singer Indira Radinović Indi, that was I mentioning before. She was allegedly so jealous of Jelena, even though there are a lot of pictures of them where they were happy and laughing and with her husband. And Indi herself said so many times that she was such a great friend to her. Then there was a theory that all members of the family sacrificed her to the Satan because she was 33 years old, like Jesus, and she was killed with 33 blows to the head. You might remember that detail from earlier. Even today makes me so pissed at all the people who were reporting to this case. People who knew them voluntarily bashed them in front of journalists and presented brutal facts or lies about them just to get into the newspaper. From the story that they had a perfect marriage, they came to the point that he mistreated her, that she wanted to run away from home, to divorce, take the child, etc. And then, you would not believe when I say this. And then, the official photos of the crime scene and the body were released to the public via tabloids. What?
Are you serious?
And you can still see them online if you search. The official photos, they only blurred her face, and the wounds on the head, but whole uncensored photos of her body laying dead in the canal, and then later when they pulled her out on the grass. And even the close-ups of her panties were released to the public via tabloids. And they were on the front pages of the tabloids. You go to the store, get to the part with newspapers, and you see a dead body all over the news. I'm sick. I'm so disappointed in us as a humanity.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to take a few moments off to cool down, basically, because I'm so angry and so disappointed and so disgusted in humanity. Later, Jelena's sister said on television that shortly after the murder, she saw the Marjanović family change the tiles in the bathroom, but she did not report that to the police. She went to TV to testify that. People are morons. People are sick morons. And that's that. So Zoran was detained and he remained in a jail for a couple of weeks so as not to interfere with further investigation and influence witnesses. The very highlight of this masquerade is Zoran's entry into the reality show program Zadruga in 2017, where he presented publicly unknown details from the case. He did not participate for even a month when he had to leave in order not to lose custody of his daughter, but it was speculated that the police ordered him to leave because he was leaking private information from the case that were not released to the public. So shortly afterwards, he was officially taken in because the mud found in Jelena's hair matched the mud found on his shoes and in his car. He spent almost 11 months in jail, but he was released due to the lack of evidence. But wasn't the mud the evidence, crucial evidence? But all this time he remained the prime suspect. And after his arrest, his father told the media that Jelena was in a relationship with the biggest mobster from Belgrade and that she demanded that he divorce his wife, which is why she was liquidated. This theory was literally immediately rejected because everyone who knew her knew that she was 24/7 with Zoran, with her daughter Jana, and especially her sick mother, because her mother was sick and she was living on a relation, her mother's house and her house. A later investigation of the canal in which Jelena was found, they found a phone that allegedly belonged to Zoran's father. But there was no further information about that. So that's maybe the same thing as what was the thing I said already. Oh, that her fingers were bleached. That's probably the made-up information from tabloids. But you know, when people who religiously read tabloids, and when someone presents something in those newspapers, they don't question it, you know, they accept it as a fact. If you go and ask today someone, were her fingers bleached, they will say yes, even though that was never confirmed. And then in the period when I was recording this episode in 2021, the latest information back then was that the trials were taking place for months over whether Zoran was at the place where he claimed to be when she was murdered, or he followed her and killed her, and they were arguing through over this because of the data of mobile operators, because some of them claimed that Zoran turned off the phone for 10 minutes while he was killing Jelena, but the MTS, which is the biggest mobile operator in Serbia, denied those claims. They also provided the court with the data showing the presence of several other people's phones at the crime scene at the time of the attack, but they did not disclose which persons. And that was the last information back in 2021. And then I shared updates on Twitter, if you were following me all these years. Several trials after that happened, around 10, I believe, and they concluded that he indeed turned off his phone. Although the defense was like, no, the signal just went by, and they said, no, the area is completely covered with signal, and that could not have happened. And then about that mud on his shoes and on his pants, it was confirmed that was the same mud as her hair, and then they found the same mud in the car. And they found also bloodstains in the car, and Zoran defended himself, saying that those bloodstains happened when she got her period once, and she was not prepared for having a period, so the blood got on the seat of the car. Anyhow, because of that mud, and because it was concluded that he turned off his phone, he was arrested finally, and he was sentenced to 40 years in prison. And he's still there. That happened half a year ago, I believe. It was the summer of 2022. But the most important thing is that he was arrested and sentenced to 40 years in prison for killing his wife, Jelena. Me personally, if you ask me, my opinion is not worth any attention, but I do believe that there were several people included in this murder, and I do believe that she was not murdered there. I believe she was murdered elsewhere and then dragged in the morning when she was found, and her stuff was scattered around. But again, I was not there. I don't know. We will never know. Was some mobster included? We don't know. Because, interesting stuff happened in the Serbia. Serbia is like, very funny country. And then, so once again, me from the future jumps in the episode. Sorry for this. But I forgot totally to mention that right after her murder, it was like the whole family had just been struck by a lightning of bad luck. Firstly, her mother died. Then Zoran's mistress from Vienna died. He later had some affair with women in Austria, in Vienna, and she died. Then his mother died. Then his father died. So all these people died, and they all were like older people except for the mistress. And Jelena's mother was also sick and old, and his father and mother were old. But talking about coincidences? Okay, Wow, this was a large episode. We are hitting a 45th minute of recording. Wow. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story. If you like the story and if you want to hear more stories like this, you can subscribe anywhere you're listening. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, we are even on YouTube, although there is no video version of the episode. But if you prefer listening to podcasts on YouTube, you can find us there. You can follow us on Instagram, freak.podcast, or Fabian Adams, but instead of a B is a 6, or the Twitter is the same, Fabian Adams, but instead of a B is a 6. And that's that. I'll see you next week. Bye. Be careful while jogging.
Bruh.